Well, welcome everyone to yet another Fortra webinar for IBMI customers. And today's topic is, why don't companies role swap? What's keeping you from doing a role swap? Myself and Mark Amacher from Fortra will provide this insight into this problem area for a lot of IT groups running on IBMI. This event is recorded. If you want a copy of the handouts, you can certainly email our marketing team. They'll provide that to you. And without further ado, let's get started. And first of all, introduce myself. I'm Tom Huntington. I am the Executive Vice President of Technical Solutions for Fortra, longtime member of the company, been here for almost 36 years now, and also an IBM Power Champion. So I spent a lot of time doing, what do you want to call it, socializing, that kind of thing around the IBMI platform and speaking at Common and other things. So Mark, how about you? What's your background on IBMI?
Tom, I've been with Fortra now for 6.5 years. I'm the senior services consultant, and I install robot products for the most part.
Awesome, awesome. And you're a previous user, right, of IBMI
Yeah,
technology or
I was a help
AS400.
system user for 20 some years before coming to Fortra.
Well, great. I'm looking forward to your insight on doing role swaps. I know you're in the trenches helping customers do that, but let's hit our agenda up. First of all, why don't companies role swap? What we do differently when it comes to role swaps, and then some options on role swaps, and then we have a pre-recorded video that we're including in this webinar on doing the role swap and what the process is, and certainly any questions or answers at the end if we have that. So why don't companies role swap? Let's hit that topic first and talk about the annual state of the IBMI marketplace. This is one of the reasons I think I'm an IBM Power Champion, Mark, is because we started this survey 10 years ago to gain some insight of what customers were doing on IBMI. And one of the questions that we've always had is, what are your top IT concerns as you plan your IT environment around IBMI? High availability disaster recovery for the 10 years that I've been doing this has always been in the top four. Sometimes it's been number one. Early on, but nowadays cybersecurity, rightfully so, is number one, but it has certainly sat in number two for many years. And I think people are evaluating their HA options all the time. And that's because you do have HA options, and we do have a lot of threats that we have to think about. Nowadays, it's not just those natural disasters or man-made disasters that we're thinking about. It's cybersecurity and other things that can impact you. And so in our survey, we also asked people about what kinds of systems do they have in place for disaster recovery. And the good news, again, this shows there are options. And there are still people doing tape backups. Virtual tape libraries have become more of common, but of course, high availability type options, and both software and hardware. Now, some of the customers who take the survey feel still today they can't afford a high availability type solution, or maybe they don't know how to manage it, et cetera. But honestly, in today's world, I think with the people who are on IBMI, it's a core system for them. It's something that's running a lot of business on there. And I think when you start really looking at it, you should be able to cost justify it. All right, Mark, what are some top reasons why customers are scared of role swaps?
Yeah, so a lot of the people that I talk with over the years, when they're first getting into this, or if they have another product, they're afraid that the data is not current. So they just don't know how good that other system is out there for replication. Second thing is they don't trust the setup. They're afraid of doing a role swap. They're afraid of the unknowns. We like to think of a role swap as being a learning experience, especially when you're doing it on purpose. You don't want to learn things in an emergency. It's better to learn them, when you have a planned role swap. And then the last thing that we run into is they just don't have experience doing it. So, the first time is always the scariest, and it gets easier over time.
So why is the data not current, Mark?
Yeah, so things like, network performance issues, transfer time, applied lag time, over the years, that's gotten better. Networks are getting more robust to handle this kind of traffic, so that's been great. But that is still, that does still affect some folks. How do they know I have my data? So, the compare process of looking at the other system, and really that comes down to doing a role swap or a virtual role swap to see what that other box looks like and being able to play over there. So that avoids or accommodates that data not being current to be able to test that. They worry about network outages. Will the software pick up after an outage? So I think most software now is very resilient in the fact that if something happens between the production box and the backup box, it now recovers. However, not everybody is trustworthy in that yet. Did we define the rules right? So, once you set up a replication software, it's important to go back and take a look at it to make sure that you're getting everything over there and you haven't added new libraries, new applications, new IFS things that aren't being replicated. So it's very important to review that, maybe twice a year to make sure that the data is all being replicated. And the last thing, are we reviewing the audit? So most software has an auditing process, and it's important for the administrators to be reviewing those. All right. So the next thing is regarding setup. It may be that you've had a replication tool in for a while and the person that implemented is no longer there. And, your software vendor like us should be able to help you with that, with training to help the next guy in line or the next gal in line. Second thing, the product is too complicated, so we don't understand the setup. We've run into that a lot where these tools have been around a long time, and sometimes they're complicated, and it's important to understand that. Again, that comes back to training. We don't know the rules to put into the product, so again, another training thing, and we help with that on our tool. And we don't understand our data. So what is missing? How do we go about understanding it? So that's an important thing to happen within the organization, to work with business analysts and people, that have been around a while, to understand what has to be replicated and what is important to your business.
Yeah, the next item is no experience. It's really tough on people as they lose staff. They don't think about these more I call it detail oriented, but more of these events that happen once or twice a year, and that's a planned role swap or, hopefully not an unplanned role swap, but nonetheless, they haven't done a role swap before, so they just don't have the experience of what's involved in that. Again, the consultant set it up, they're gone, they've retired too, or they want too much for help and we can't afford it. Those are all issues that come into play there. Our supplier is no longer in business, so maybe either the application you're running is no longer in business, we've basically taken over and you're working on it yourself, or the vendor who sold you the HA solution is no longer in business, or they've been consolidated, or it's just not their focus anymore. And then probably one of the number one ones is our management team just won't authorize us to do a role swap. They want IBMI available all the time, right? It's core to the business, and so consequently they can't take it down to actually do a role swap. So, why should we do a role swap? In my mind, it's the same concept of backup. So backup's not a backup unless you test it. Same logic applies for HA unless you test your HA when the chips are down and you really need to depend on it. If you've never tested it, you're going to be in trouble. The other thing is regulations and management's desire to have business continuity is very important here, and you need to learn what is dependent on IBMI. IBMI is no longer just IBMI by itself. Most customers have hooks into it from a website that's off of IBMI or other business applications that depend on it. So you also want a predictable and confident process so that when it comes time again, you know how to do it, it's documented, you have people assigned, or you know who to call. Mark Amacher. You can't afford to be the next business in the news, right? I mean, that you couldn't recover. We got ransomware out there. Of course, we got a lot of disasters that we see nowadays. And then you also have regulations that require you to test out your roll swaps, especially like in the banking industry, yet many people never roll swap. Now, the good news, it is possible with IBMI. Customers do this, and they have been doing it for years. So again, going along with the idea is why should we test our HADR process? Well, when a disaster strikes, you want business continuity to be in place so that you know how to do it confidently. The other aspect of this is you've invested in new hardware, another box, another partition that you're renting up in the cloud, maybe. You've got the new software that you've put in place. You have better technology in place today. Mark talked about improvements in communications and all those things that should lead for a good experience, but you still need to test it. And you know what? It's expected to work if a disaster occurs. So what happens if it doesn't work or you're down longer than what you promised? Find other application dependencies. That's the big thing of doing these roll swaps is, what else is hooked into IBMI? And basically, it's one of those things again, its success will make or break your career. I hate to lay that on you that way, but, I always felt when I was responsible for backups and HA type things, when I was running systems, is that, hey, it's my responsibility to make sure this company can roll swap and use that technology. So don't wait for your customers to test it out for you. You need to do it yourself. All right. So what do we do differently? So early on, when we got into the HA market about 7-8 years ago, we found out that customers weren't roll swapping. Matter of fact, the people who wrote Mimics and that company used to put out a survey. They don't do that anymore. But I used to say that only 10% of the customers, and them being the number one supplier, their customers were comfortable doing a roll swap. So 90% of the marketplace wasn't comfortable doing roll swaps. Other vendors and resellers weren't focused on roll swaps. And still today, I think that we're selling people technology to do the backups or to do the HA, but what we really should be focusing on is the restore, the roll swap. The other thing is fundamental setup issues. These products were set up decades ago in a lot of cases, and nobody's looked at the fundamental part because they're scared of it and their lack of understanding of it. Mark, from your perspective, what does our services team do to help customers out?
Yeah, so we're your coach. All right. So we like to come in. We do this a lot. We install a lot, and we like to come in and get a good understanding of your business. We clean up things, or we help you identify things that need to be cleaned up, and that makes the whole process better. We'll modify things like your startup program so that your production one does the same thing that it's always done, but your backup system one, just starts DR. And then our programs actually, when you do a roll swap, that they would switch that out, so it becomes the production one. So we talk about startup programs, review system replication aspects, IP addresses, user profiles, and things like that. We make sure that those get sent over to the other system. We look into file definitions, triggers, constraint, commitment, control. They all have to be handled specially. So we identify those things where we can and handle them appropriately on the backup box. So our goal when we come in with like Robot HA is to help prepare you. So we want to make sure that you're ready to do a roll swap, and we like to actually take you all the way through the process of a roll swap. That is the main goal, is to get you to be able to roll swap your system. At a bare minimum, we like to get you to the roll swap while active, which is like a virtual roll swap. And we want to make sure that it's comfortable for you and your organization. And we want to repeat it. We have customers that that do roll swaps twice a year. And that's a good thing. It makes sure everything is fresh and repeatable.
Awesome. Some additional tips on being successful with roll swaps is develop a step-by-step plan. Have that checklist. We don't want a lot of manual things, but we do need reminders on that checklist of things that we need to do that are major to the success of this. And then role play yourself through a disaster. What happens if it's on a Friday versus Sunday versus Monday and at 8 a.m. versus 4 p.m. during the day? When I was planning out our business around recovery, and back then it was recovery from tape, or diskette maybe even, but tape primarily. I would always role play and say, what happened if it happened at this time? It's a really, sit in a room with some of the other team members and or your consultant and ask those questions. Periodically verify your replication software is working. And what I mean by that is really set up automation. My background's automation. There's no reason you should be having somebody manually checking the HA product daily. You should use automation software or set it up to notify itself. I mean, periodically go into it for sure. Great idea to do that. Like Mark talks about, go in and do that full audit, every 6 months. Hey, did we add any new libraries? Did we, did our environment change? Things that we're not thinking about. And then where you do have manual processes, develop automation scripts for your applications. How are you going to shut down your application? How are you going to start up your application? How do you verify the health of your business data? Is my data current? Write some SQL scripts, some queries, whatever you need. Use your BI solution. Just some quick things to say, okay, yep, we're current. We're exactly the way we want to be. Talk to other customers that have your application. If you're running N4XA, talk to another N4XA customer. How do they do HA role swaps? If you got Infinium or some of the other products out there, I'm sure there are other customers that have done it before you. Remember too, this is only a test. Expect to learn. Management needs to understand this too. A lot of times they'll say, well, you got the time to do the role swap. Why did it fail? Well, no, that's not truly the case. It was successful because we found problems when we tried to role swap, right? The business is still running, but we found this and this and this. Next time we do a role swap, we need to include these items in our process. Ease into that first role swap. Mark talked about test while active. That can be phase 1 or virtual role swap. I mean, many vendors have that as an option. And then honestly, you need to budget for a role swap. It's not necessarily free. It's time. It's maybe overtime from a labor perspective. You might decide to contract with a vendor like Fortra to bring in our consultants to help you out. And then also you want to make sure you contact all your vendors for backup and recovery DR system license keys, whether they're temporary keys or whatever. Don't wait until the Friday before your roll swap test to ask for license keys. You're going to be disappointed because some vendors are not as responsive as other vendors. So keep that in mind. So Mark, when we consider services, why are we doing that? What's going on?
Well, the products themselves, Tom, are easy to set up. It's the things on the outside that you might not realize that how your environment is unique. So those are things that me and other folks within Fortra can help identify. Identify those hurdles before you get to them, so you can prepare.
Yeah, it's a great point. And then the other aspect of it is certainly you could consider, another test site. You need to have an MSP maybe to help you out because you don't have a second box. You don't want to buy another box. You don't have a great data center, I should say server, right? You don't have another server or another VM. So there are MSP managed service providers that will provide you a partition for rent or for subscription is probably another way of looking at that. They also will monitor your system and include monitoring of the HA technology. And they may also help you with a role swap independent of Fortra. Some of the providers out there will also help you out with that. But certainly we're here to be contracted and help you out in that regards. So let's talk about the various role swap options. And actually, there's really two from us. So we'll cover those. Mark, over to you to talk about the first step. Why is this important?
Yep, our first one is a role swap while active or a test while active role swap, same thing. And basically what this does is it leaves your production system alone. And so your users can be on there working away. And we usually just do this during the workday. We take your backup system offline and roll swap that backup system. You can get on there and look at things and make sure that things start up the way they do without worrying about affecting your business. So it does pause the replication for that time that you are in the roll swap while active condition on your backup system. But after that's finished, everything will just catch up. Now it's important if you change data, then we have to do compares and refresh data at that point. But this is a simple way to step into the roll swap process so that so you're comfortable with it, and it makes the next step easier when you do a full roll swap. So that's the roll swap while active.
And I think that important point on this too is that while you're in this mode, the data is still being journaled over on the production system. And the remote journals, I can't remember, Mark, are the remote journals still active when this is going on? I believe so.
They're inactive during this.
They're inactive. Okay. All right. Yep. So the local journaling is still going on. Those transactions are being recorded. And then when you come out of this mode, the systems just connect up and reconnect up all those transactions. So it's a very important point. Then a full roll swap. Our goal here is to get you to that full roll swap. We want you to be able to switch production to backup and backup to production, source or target and source, depending upon what you want to call it. People call them DR and production and, all those kinds of different things. But nonetheless, you need to get to a full roll swap. This time of the year, we're thinking about hurricane season across North America. And so time to plan for, if you need help, give us a call. Even if you're on another application, we might actually take that call and talk to you about how we could help you out. But really with Robot HA, give us a call and we'll help you through your first roll swap and full roll swap. You need to be doing this on a regular basis, at least once a year. We have some customers that do it quarterly. We have other customers that do it every 6 months. And then, of course, a bunch of customers where it's an annual type activity. Budget for it. So now with that said, I'm going to have a video come up on how our full roll swap works. So, and we'll talk a little bit about some other things along the way. So let's get started with that.
Hello, today we're here to talk about Robot HA's roll swap and how to get started with it. The first thing that we should always be familiar with is the roll swap user guide. At Fortra, we want this to be a successful process for you. And when we think about a roll swap, we should always think about it initially, the first few times we do it, it's a test. You want to verify that you can actually use all your hard work in setting up replications so that you can actually use it in a time of emergency. Well, first of all, we have this user guide, and I recommend you read it from cover to cover. As we scroll through here, you'll see it's a total of 29 pages, but a bunch of them are indexes and stuff, so really a pretty simple read. And then depending upon what type of roll swap you're going to do, you have two choices. You have a swap while active roll swap, or you have the full roll swap. Before either one of them, we do need to verify some things up front. So let's go to preparing for a roll swap. When we prepare for a roll swap, we want to make sure that, first of all, our systems are set up in the proper mode that we want. Our applications, we know how to shut down our applications that we might be shutting down. All those things that we don't know about as a vendor. We don't know your applications. You know your applications. Then we can compare things. So we want to make sure that our TCP/IP and all those things have been set up correctly. They should have been from the get-go, but it's pretty obvious if they're not working. Obviously, you won't be replicating. And then step 3 is important to check to make sure that all your sync attributes are in the right status. We'll walk through this in a little bit. Same with your configuration information in the product. I'll show you that. That's relatively simple. Also, that we're replicating a library called RSF User, Robot HA. And then another big thing is startup programs. Often people don't think about this, but your source side, your prod side, should have a different startup program than your backup side. And the reason is because you want to not be running production jobs over on your backup server. You want it to be down so that your replication can run properly. And then there's also the role swap audit job that we have that we can run in step 8. So that's good. So like I said, there's a couple different role swaps. I'm going to jump down to the full role swap, and that's where we're going to begin. I'm going to show you this live today. In order to verify things, we need to think about some things up front. We have to have 2 workstations that are connected to both the prod side and the backup side, and they need to be defined as by 27 by 132 so we can work with the work attributes. And then we also need console devices. So we'll need 2 console devices, one for prod and one for backup. Again, this is a planned role swap. So with a planned role swap, we're actually going to start the role swap on the production side and wrap it up on the backup side. So first things we're going to do is sign off. Well, we're actually going to make sure all of our attributes are set the way we want them, assuming we've done all that. And then we're going to go through some steps in here to actually start the role swap on the production side. And then we're going to go to the backup side, and we're going to do a very similar set of things. Again, this process here runs from the console device on your server. So you need to have a console for production, a console for backup. Now we're ready. We've got a little bit familiar with the user guide. Our goal again is to make sure that your life is easy and repeatable when it comes to doing a role swap using Robot HA. Okay, so now we've read through the user guide. We're happy with the process that we're going to be doing for a role swap. So let's actually execute a role swap. So the first thing I'm going to do is I know I'm running my Insight server over here, and I need to end my TCP IP server for Robot HA because we're using it for doing some queries and stuff against the Robot HA database. So I ended that. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to pop through Robot HA on my production side and make sure my sync times are pretty good here. Everything looks, no errors in my error column. And as I roll through here, I'll see everything looks good, pretty up to date. I might submit my config again just to bring that up to date in case anybody added a user profile or any other system configuration item. And I might as well sync my private authorities and my user profiles then. So here we go. That's all running. That should be up to date here in just a bit. All good to go. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm ready. I've done my testing, my audit. I know I have my production system. And if I sign over here on my target system, I will see my system here. It is set to backup. So we need a production and a backup. We're good. So at this point, I sign off of both sides. So I don't lock any files within Robot HA because I was in the menu system. And then again, we have our bottom sessions here, which are our console devices running on Able and Elba. They're running in Q control. So now I can go into Robot HA and start my role swap. I'm going to do option 7. My users are off the system. Option 10. And I'm going to do yes, I want to do my role swap. That's going to start the process. It's going to end the sync jobs. So as a reminder, those sync jobs are the jobs that are on the job queue on RSFHA that are running the process of looking to see if anything has changed on the system. And so those take a little bit to clear off the job queue and make sure that we end them nicely. We're down to 11 now. Now we're working on the remote journals where we're talking to the other server. And we're removing the remote journals on the backup system at this point, verifying that we can communicate. At this point, what we're doing is we're looking at bringing back the Robot HA settings from the backup system to the production side. So remember, we want to now set production as backup. So we're going to modify those settings. By the way, if you did have a failure and you just wanted to switch over, I say just, you had a failure and you want to switch over, you can just run the role swap from your backup system and switch it over so you can start doing business right away while you fix the problem on the failed server. I often get that question, but okay, do I have to do it from prod? What happens if prod goes away? Of course, prod's gone. We're importing some of the settings. setting our manual sync points. There we go. Able is now set up as the backup system. So I'm going to go down to a command line there. And now I'm going to go over to Elba and I'm going to switch Elba to become the production system. In order to do that, I'm going to go in and do a role swap of the now backup system still, and I'm going to make it production. Here we go. Again, we're running that out of a console device. And it's going to run probably a little faster because there's less sync jobs that it has to end and a few other things. So the switching the backup side to prod usually goes a little faster. And the idea then is it's going to restore the settings for Robot HA over on the old backup system. And I'll show you that in just a little bit. So now we've switched the backup to be prod. Okay, so we got that all done. I'm going to come down here. I'm going to sign off both of my consoles. I'm going to sign on then to Elba, which is now my new production system, or it should be. So we should see all the rules there. Go into Robot HA, option 1. And yes, indeed, we see all of our rules that existed on the backup side. We do F11. There's our IFS rules, and there's our system rules. And so at this point in time, we'd be ready to start Elba up as a production environment. And if we look over on our Able system, we'll see that it is now set up as the backup. It only has a few rules in it. Now, the other thing that we want to do is work with our job queue entries. At this point, if we want to start replication up, one of the things we're going to have to do is release the RSF HA job queue, because that's been put on hold. So after we release the job queue on both systems, we are ready now to do our testing. After our testing is all done, we would just simply do another full role swap. Thank you for joining me today on role swapping.
Yeah, so that's it. Mark, any comments that you might have to fill in some other additional tips? Obviously, you guys go through greater detail and things, but anything else?
Yeah, the big thing is, just getting your system ready to go through that role swap process. Times may or may not be as fast as the one you just did, depending on how complex the system is and things like that. But the role swap is pretty fast. Generally, I would say 90% of our customers are able to do a role swap on each side in under 10 minutes. So, it's fairly fast. And you think 20 minutes to move your business from one server to another server is quite acceptable in most cases. So no, good job.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that said, I just want to remind you that the Fortra company, IBMI, is important to us. We can help you out with backup and recovery and HA. Document management around IBMI. People forget that we do a lot of that. Cybersecurity, of course, kind of the number one thing it seems that comes up these days that we're taking care of. Of course, we can monitor your system. We can monitor your HA solution. You want to monitor both the production side and the HADR side. We also help people out with business intelligence, planning your next server. If you're going from Power 8, Power 9 to Power 10, we can help you out with that, or even moving to the cloud. And then automation. As you know, we started in the business of automation. That's where Fortra started on the IBMI platform. All very important things to us. But also don't forget, Fortra has become a cybersecurity company. Hence the name change. It simply was a name change from Help Systems to Fortra. But we help people out with things like data DLP security, email security. We help protect your brand out in the wild, like Facebook and other social networks. We also help people with secure file transfer, vulnerability management. We can come in and assess your entire organization. And then penetration testing. It's important to, like you do HA testing, to also do penetration testing, offensive security. We have several offerings in that area. And if you don't have time to do it yourself, we have managed services around many of these things that we do. Well, we also do automation on Windows, Unix, Linux. Besides IBMI, we have robotic process automation, enterprise scheduling, workload automation, network monitoring, all those things. And then, of course, our IBMI solutions. With that said, this is our contact information. You can email Mark or I, and we certainly will get back to you about any of your questions around high availability, disaster recovery on IBMI. I talk to customers all the time about all the various options that you have. And we want to thank you for joining us today. It's been great working with you. Thank you, Mark. You have a wonderful day helping customers with another HADR setup, probably, right?
Yep. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone on the call.
You're welcome. Bye now.